Hello and welcome to Auto Shenanigans. How the devil are you? Have you had a good week? My name is John. Thank you very much for joining me for another exciting episode of Secrets of the Motorway. This week is the last episode of a series that began in July 2022. After a year and a half, we visited every single motorway in England, Scotland and Wales. Sorry Ireland, you're going to have to wait. So for the last time, let's go and explore some motorway, and today we'll be continuing with the M25. Over the last two episodes, we've been making our way around the M25 from the motorway start in Dartford, and we'd made it as far as the Gate Valley Viaduct and Junction 20 in Hertfordshire. Today I'm at Junction 21, which is a motorway-to-motorway interchange between the M25 and the M1. It's free-flowing in most directions, but you'll notice it's lacking a set of slip roads that join with the M1 on the south side of the junction. It's not exactly been confirmed as to why they didn't build these missing slip roads, but the most logical explanation can be found at Junction 6 of the M1. This junction, along with the motorway, was constructed long before the M25, and if you were to install the missing slip roads at the interchange, they most likely wouldn't fit. And if they did fit, they would cause all sorts of problems with the existing Junction 6 on the M1, so it's most likely that they just left them out. Between Junctions 21 and 22, and the motorway slices through what was previously the site of Radlett Aerodrome, an airfield that opened in 1929 and was home to the aircraft manufacturer Handley Page. Initially, the airfield had a grass runway, but as Handley Page moved into the manufacture of larger aircraft such as the Halifax bomber, a proper runway was installed in 1939. According to this map of the airfield, the M25 passes through between the end of the main runway and a set of buildings that serve various uses. Today, those buildings are an industrial estate and there's little trace left of the runway, but you can just about make out its outline on satellite images. Junction 23, or Bignell's Corner, is where the M25 and the A1M meet, and it's fine as long as you don't need to actually use the junction. For some reason, they've insisted on installing a million sets of traffic lights, so sometimes it can take what seems like forever to get round. On the junction, you'll find South Mim service station, the first services to be opened on the M25 in 1987. After Junction 23 and the motorway carriageways split, leading to many people wondering why. The answer is that failed London Ringways project. We touched on this in the last episode, but here are the details. The section of M25 between Junctions 19 and Junctions 23 was never supposed to happen. The original 1960s plans suggest that two motorways known as Ringway 3 and Ringway 4 would have passed through the area a bit like this. The space between the carriageways is where Ringway 3 would have continued along its journey, with there most likely being a set of slip roads connecting up to the Junction 23 roundabout, although I don't know if it would have been Junction 23. With project cancellations, it didn't really work out like that, but so determined were they to have at least one orbital motorway of London, the already built sections were hastily stitched together, and Junctions 19 to 23 is the result of that. It's why Junction 19 has an odd free-flowing layout, and why there's space up at Junction 23. It was never supposed to be this way. Just before Junction 24, if you take a look out to your right, you might spot a railway tunnel ventilation shaft or two. The East Coast Main Line runs underneath the motorway here via an 1,100 metre long tunnel. Actually, there are two tunnels here side by side. The Eastbourne Tunnel opened in 1850, whilst the Westbourne Tunnel wouldn't open until over 100 years later in 1959. I assume by this point, rail traffic had increased and more rails were laid. Just before Junction 25, you'll pass under at first glance what appears to be a fairly ordinary bridge, but if you take a closer look, it's got quite a bit of depth to it and quite a bit of width. It certainly seems a bit unnecessary for carrying a footpath. Maybe it's an old abandoned road bridge. Turns out that no, this bridge was never really designed with a road or a pathway in mind, and instead contained within the bridge is a river. The river, known as New River, is an artificial waterway constructed in 1613. It carries drinking water from Ware in Hertfordshire along a 20 or so mile long route into London, and when the M25 came along, the motorway had to be dug into the ground and this bridge created so as not to upset the level course of the river. Here's a question for you. What's the longest tunnel on the M25? If you said the Dartford Tunnel, then I'm sorry, that's not correct, and you clearly haven't been paying attention to the previous episodes. If you could hand in your motorway membership card on the way out, that'd be fantastic. The longest tunnel on the M25 would be the Holmesdale Tunnel found in Waltham Cross. An impressive structure it is not, having been built in the 1980s using the cut and cover method. In the early days of motorway planning, they allocated this stretch of land for the motorway to be built on. However, when they finally got round to actually building the motorway, they decided that the land they'd allocated was no longer large enough to accommodate a motorway. So the decision was made to build a tunnel instead, as somehow that was seen as the more convenient option. The grass area I'm standing on now may not have existed had the original plans been carried out, and the view from the surrounding houses may have been very different indeed. Just before Junction 27 and the motorway crosses over a railway, but it's not just any railway, this is part of London Underground's Central Line, all the way out here in Essex. Today, the line terminates a short distance up at Epping Station. However, up until the mid-90s, the underground trains used to run as far as Chipping Ongar. Ongar Station is interesting because despite being closed to the London Underground for at least 25 years, it's the point at which all official distances are measured across the underground network. For example, Epping Station should have a sign displaying 9.85 kilometres because that's how far it is from the starting point of measurement. Whilst the sign at Ongar Railway Station should read 0.0 kilometres, I've oversimplified things really, but the point is this now closed to the London Underground station is still the basis of a measurement system still in use today. I've no idea why they decided to use kilometres though. Ongar Station, despite being closed to the London Underground for all of these years, remains open and operates as a heritage railway, although unfortunately it doesn't quite connect up with Epping Station like it used to. Due to a lack of platforms and signalling and other railway stuff, for now the Epping Ongar Railway can't run trains into Epping Station, but they do have plans to change that in the not too distant future, which will be rather handy. This is Junction 27, or the Thame Interchange. It's where the M25 and the M11 motorways meet, a rare example of a whirlpool interchange. The interchange has free-flowing traffic movements in all directions, and the design is such because it takes up a lot less space than, say, a four-level stack interchange, such as the one found at Thorney between the M25 and M4. An interesting design feature of the whirlpool interchange is that in places the slip roads run alongside one another. If you've ever driven this interchange, you'll know that they're separated by nothing more than a row of traffic cones. Whilst this seems questionable, it does allow several opportunities for the emergency services to switch slip roads should they need to. Just boot the cones out of the way and off you go. Between junctions 27 and 28 lies old McDonalds Farm. It turns out it's next to the M25. For motorway travellers, it's a bit of a landmark that stands out with its traction engine in a field. That said, it's lucky to exist at all. Looking over the 1960s Ringway plans, what we nearly had instead was a motorway-to-motorway junction or interchange right about where old McDonalds Farm is. This would have been the point where Ringway 4 connects up with Ringway 3, most likely at a limited access free-flowing junction, although some sources suggest that there wouldn't have been a junction at all and that Ringway 4 would have run down to connect up with the A12 at junction 28. In either case, it's most probable that old McDonald wouldn't have had a farm. Junction 28, or the Brook Street interchange, mostly predates the M25. It was built in the 1960s as part of the Brentwood bypass, or the A12, and when it came to the motorway, they simply built that over the top, rearranged the slip roads a bit and called it a day. Handy hint for you, there's a petrol station just off the roundabout in Junction that's usually a little bit cheaper than the nearest service station, which in this case is Thurrock, and that's rubbish. Junction 29 is where we find the A127, and whilst the A127 predates the M25, the junction does not. Before the M25, the A127 just passed straight through here, but it was shunted over a bit to make way for the motorway and the junction. Because the A127 was shunted over a bit, there are some remains of the original carriageway to be found. On the east side of the junction, there's some sort of maintenance yard in which there's a piece of the original A127, and on the other side of the junction, albeit overgrown, there are further remains of the A127 carriageway. Bang! And the daylight has gone. The last junction on the M25 is the Mardyke Interchange, named after the river that it's built over. As a result of the river, the southern slip roads have their own bridges that run alongside the main carriageway. The junction is where the M25 and the A13 meet, and it's interesting because the A13 heading to the west from the junction wasn't completed until long after the eastern section and the M25. This resulted in the A13 flyover bridge sitting in a state of disuse for around 15 years whilst they finished off construction of the A13 to the west. And there we are then, guys, that's all we've got time for this week, and we're at the end of the series. I had no idea when I started I'd be making 80 videos documenting all the various motorways, but here we are. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you liked the series. If you did, there is of course a button specifically for that, and if you haven't subscribed already, I'm not really sure why, but please consider doing so. That'd be wicked sweet awesome. Enjoy the rest of your week, whatever it is you get up to. My name's John, you've been watching Auto Shenanigans, and I'll see you guys next time for another exciting episode of something. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.